And also, thank you so much for the invite. It's brilliant to, even though we're virtual today, to have the opportunity to talk at Fundamentals, which I think is a very important technology from SAP, and particularly for us in SAP Design, and going to my role, which has been the technical advisor within, a swarm of designers. I'm the nerd, and also leading a prototyping team there. What we want to do is actually get our designs closer to being able to be adopted by technology, because ultimately we're a software company, and unless we can get our beautiful design system and concepts and ideas delivered in code and in ways in which we can actually use them, our end users in the end don't get the best experience possible that they can have. So I've been working in design for too many years, I would say. Had some breaks in between, but always looking at pushing concepts as a way in which we don't just do them in a kind of a way in which we can't consume them, but in a way that can actually be taken forward into product. And as I said, it's exciting to talk today about an overview of what is it that makes enterprise UX and considering enterprise users different than, say, traditional consumer level design and the user ideas there, and then moving that to, and where do we see the future for those enterprise users and the people we're designing for? What are the kind of key topics that we think they're going to be essential for enterprise users to consider in the future, and therefore our designs, the experiences, how should they be informed? And ultimately how prototyping can help, how really experimentation, how pushing the boundaries and taking examples from other industries can help us actually get closer to that, to those kind of next level experiences that our users want and need and will continue to need in the future. And then a bit of a call to action, really, for everyone here to say experimentation is essential and is key for us to deliver brilliant experiences. And to do that, we need flexible technology and an end-to-end consideration from design to development. So let's kick off. So why is enterprise different to consumer? So a lot of us might have be familiar more with the consumer level design concepts and way in which we design for consumers. And when I say a consumer, I mean someone who can download an app from an app store, someone who can just go onto a website and they have a choice, right? And one of the key differences is actually our users in enterprise, the people we're developing for solutions and experiences, they can't choose us, right? You go to your work and you basically get your enterprise software provider. Hopefully that's SAP. Obviously, this person's not using SAP, as you can see, or at least not the most modern of the interfaces we provide. But basically, when you think about it, no one chooses us in one way, right? That we really, you come to work, it's part of your environment, and you're stuck with us. And that's very different than, say, delivering a consumer level experience where really the experience is that first moment that you see, right? This is the first touch point, and therefore the expectations are very different, because our users are coming also from a working point of view, right? So they're coming to get something done in their work. So they're coming in with a different viewpoint. They're not coming because they say, I'd love to do some work now in SAP. I'd love to enter my materials or process my invoices right now. Maybe some people do. Maybe you want to do that on a Friday evening. But we have to consider that mindset as we move forward with actually delivering enterprise experiences, that it's there to get work done, so that people get that work done and then move on to topics that they can continue with their work. Also, we're doing very complex things. Business is not trivial, right? So a lot of enterprise tasks do require an awful lot of data that happens over historical periods and have very high consequence outcomes, right? You could be signing off orders for multi-million-dollar production lines that will run across multiple global locations, and you're responsible for that. And the software necessarily is going to be complex to be able to handle that, but also the data structures, the data points that are coming in are complex. So on one level, it might be great to look at consumer level UX and say, and take inspiration from that and say, wow, everything's, simple and uncluttered. But sometimes we have to consider that, well, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of decisions, there's lots of ways in which our users need information. So our interfaces will be necessarily at points complex. They will need some mastery, right? And another point to make here is that we can't expect every user to be either just instantly understand how to do a very complex end-to-end process or a very complex business decision, that it does take some time to learn that. It does need some training. There does need to be mastery that's learned along the way, and provide solutions and experiences that adapt along the way for those users as they're learning the tasks at hand. And we have legacy, right? It would be great that we just build a new app, ship it, put it on the app store. We don't have to worry about what happens before. It just updates on the phone, or we update our website in one sense in a web app, and the customer gets the latest and greatest. Our experiences have to connect to, they have to grab data from, they have to incorporate different interface technologies, because companies can't just switch overnight in a simple upgrade to later software. And the cloud, of course, makes this much easier in terms of being able to deliver it, software, and we can take an awful lot of advantages from that. But we always have to consider we're working with different technologies, versions, eras, as well as the actual business processes themselves, an actual task that takes end to end, from product to realization, from design to operate. These can touch many, many systems, some which won't be on the latest and greatest technologies, some which will necessarily be legacy because of business decisions, which means we have to consider that when we're designing. We can't always start from scratch. A bit controversial, but I think it's fair to say. Also, the expectations are high. Right? We've got people coming, sitting down 9 to 5 using SAP. They have no choice. We have an expectation, and people want their software. People are using, consumer grade experiences, which don't have so many of these issues that to deal with, and have a lot of innovation and also very instant feedback, a different world. And they're expecting that in their work life. But also, people have got used to business software. I'm sure most users aren't then particularly surprised when they do use a business application that it doesn't have the exact experience, let's say, and bells and whistles of some of the consumer level software, right? Which also we can is an interesting insight for us as designers and developers in the enterprise world, that actually it can take some very small improvements, but very critical and necessary improvements in experience to really elevate people's abilities, capabilities, and acceptance of the work that they're doing. And that also makes it a very interesting area to work in, because even though the bar sometimes is quite low, we can actually make change very quickly, very rapidly in certain areas, which can have a huge impact to what is necessarily a lot of people's working time and a lot of people's lives. And I think this is what makes it particularly exciting to use. So to me, really, an enterprise user really needs us to be there for them, right? It's essential that we consider these points, because we have this unique relationship with our user base. We have this obligation, and I often talk about the obligation that, without us caring in a business sense for the software that people are using day to day in their working life, those people will not get the best experiences they want. They might also not be as successful as they can be because of our experiences. And that particularly works towards the inclusive topic, which is absolutely essential, even more, I think, in enterprise. Because if people cannot use our software, if people cannot interact with our software, people cannot interpret our software, then often they can't do certain jobs, they can't do certain tasks. And this is so empowering for us to consider a user base where we can actually make things happen on such a deep level, so that people can be successful in their life. And we have to understand why people are using our software. right? The mindset. Work is hard. Not all of us love working. I, of course, love most of my work, but there are days where I do not want to be working. I'd rather be on holiday. Or that the work is very challenging. I'm tired. It's complex. It's difficult. And our experiences need to understand that, as well as sometimes just get out of the way of the user, right? You need to get some work done. I want to get that work done so I can shut off the computer and leave you. We're not looking in the same way as sort of engagement of, let's say, the classic example today of TikTok, for example, which is all about keeping the user engaged and engrossed in whatever video content that they provide. Often in enterprise, it's the other way. Actually, a great experience is just to get out of the way of the user, let them get their work done, and so they can switch off and do something else. And that's a very different type of relationship we have with the user. And we need to make do with what we have. We cannot just always consider that we start from scratch. It's very rare indeed. So what we've got to consider is compatibility. We need to look at the past. We've got to see the learned patterns that people are familiar with, because also you can't just suddenly come in and just say, by the way, that task that you've been doing for 10 years and is critical for you to be successful at work, we just completely redesigned it. You know, the classic, we've upgraded your experience, and suddenly users are lost and they then lose productivity trying to learn the new patterns. What we need to consider are small iterative changes that strike this balance between being desirable, helping people to get work done, being more productive, being joyful, of course, that people enjoy the software, but also understanding in viability that we need to get our work done. That's where our software is there for enterprise to get successful. And so that's the kind of basis of our relationship. So let's do a bit of future gazing. And actually, a lot of this isn't gazing into the future, it's here and now. But we've got to consider these qualities going forward of where are our users looking to work in the future, the way that they're looking towards our software experiences in the future, because of the way in which their technology is changing the work environment. And, first thing, which we often have been saying for quite a while, but you see big changes coming already, that AI will automate those boring, repetitive tasks, right? So production lines will just run because if there's a small fault or something, a computer can handle the case by using a statistical model or a machine learning model to take an action in a trusted way. Or I'm not sure many people will be crying about this fact, but there are recent studies or machine learning models where laws can just be applied because it's textual content. There's modeling behind law. There's relationships between different laws, which means if you're a company and you want to set up a shop in China and you need to adhere to the local laws or any other country, the actual systems can start to apply legal constraints. It can, provide certain compliance documentation automatically. So law can just be applied. But what happens to the lawyers? As I said, we're not sure so many people will be that upset about that future. But put it another way, look at the new DALL-E project from OpenAI, right? That even someone like me who can't draw to save my life, I can just do a scribble of a cat, put a little piece of text into a machine learning model, and I get a beautifully produced image for myself. What does that mean for graphic artists? That's now, in some concepts embedded in Photoshop. You can just do a very simple sketch, put a little text about what you want, and suddenly photorealistic content is produced on the fly. That will completely radically change industry very close to us. And what this means is that, on one side, this is great. And going back to enterprise, if we're not doing approvals all the time, what it means is that we can be more creative. But the problem is, and looking at the flip side of this for our user, if artificial intelligence or machine learning in the most basic sense basically looks at patterns of behavior, what happened before, learns from that, and then says, I see in things very similar to this, maybe slightly different, but I give you an estimate of where or a confidence of doing a certain thing because of that. Now, if the machine's never seen a case before, if a machine's never sort of seen a certain condition set before, if it's not quite sure, guess who needs to decide? The user. Which means that those type of things which users will be more involved with, I really truly believe, will be more exceptions, those critical things where the machine doesn't know what to do. And with that, you can start to think, well, our users are actually going to have to do more analysis tasks. Users are going to have to take more critical decisions because all of the mundane stuff, the 90% is being automated. But that 10% will be where users are going to be expected, and our software needs to provide experiences to handle those type of analytical tasks. But from that, of course, we can think that users become more creative because now I'm not doing all these approvals. I might have these exceptions coming in and flowing through, but now I'm more free to analyze things. I'm more free to have concepts and new ideas. I'm more free to, experience and deliver more value for my company because I'm not just doing holiday approvals. And for this, you've got to think that if users are going to start to analyze more, they're going to have to start to be able to create concepts or create things which are above and beyond what we currently consider. Maybe users will need more than just, master detail, form, reports, tiles, the kind of core concepts we have around enterprise UX. We're going to have to start considering, well, users will be freer to actually have more complex ideas and be able to ask a software to help them provide those type of tasks in terms of a software solution and an experience. But again, on the flip side of that, we've now got our user doing critical tasks. They're now creating things. They're now being asked to work in different types of role because now all that knowledge that you had of being able to run a production line, of being the process expert, of being able to handle certain situations, that's all automated. So now you're also being more creative. You're also going to be changing job more often. You're going to be more flexible in the type of work that you have. And all this is going to put a big mental strain on our users. And so it's important that we also consider the working environment becoming more flexible, but also maybe we can provide more supportive software in terms of insights and in case of providing these type of solutions where people can really understand, I can learn new tasks simply, the software gets out of the way, but I'm able to get on with my new responsibilities in the best way possible. If software is annoying today, it will become even more annoying in the future, right? If you're not able to do something. And we all know this from the wonderful new working environment that we all have, whether that's home office or hybrid working, however you want to put it. But we are free to work wherever we want. There is a great advantage to that, right? And you can spend a month somewhere beautiful and work from, the mountaintops, or you could be just working at home and not having to deal with the commute every day. And software is allowing us to be flexible on that level. We couldn't probably have done this 15 years ago. And flexibility in the work environment means the same flexibility in software. I need to be able to, if I'm out in the garden and needing to make a decision, to be able to do that on a phone the same way as I can on a desktop. Whereas before it would be expected I'm on a desktop. Now we need flexibility in our software. But as maybe a lot of us already know, what then is what's work and what's home, and the blending of software and the experiences and devices becomes very difficult to understand. It becomes blurred. And that means that add in all this criticality, extra responsibilities, and all this maximum flexibility where I'm expected to work from wherever, this will come with a cost to our user base, right? And so our users, in the end, and to sort of summarize on that, we really believe that one solution won't fit all. Having even customization points, it just will not solve these very complex, very personal differences in our user base, right? But they will become more and more essential to solve to provide great experiences in the future. It won't be enough just to provide a table anymore, right? And know that maybe it never was, but in some cases, a table will be great for a certain context, for a certain person with a certain experience in a certain condition. But maybe it's not for someone else. Maybe it's in a different situation for a different type of use case, for a different user who's new to this certain role. That wouldn't be the best way. So we need really highly adaptive software and experiences that really can adapt and understand more deeply what it is about the person, the user behind the experience. Why are they coming to this application? What is it that they require? What would it be supportive for them? And what, therefore, is something that's empowering, that we need to produce experiences that don't just take over control of the user's own imagination or expertise, but rather help and guide along the way to become something which is supportive rather than something which is either, as I say, taking decisions on the behalf of the user or something that gets in the way of the user. It needs to become more and more empowering, and it needs to be as inclusive as possible. And it all, this is a tenet that's true for all design, but particularly in enterprise, we must create experiences that work for everyone, and also understand that our workforce is evolving. We're going to have all these changes in terms of capabilities, of knowledge of certain tasks. And so we need to get closer to understanding the individual needs and then tailoring experiences around that, while still delivering that as an enterprise, right? And to me, the core of that is experimentation. What we can't do, and we shouldn't do as an enterprise design community, is just stick with what we're doing today and iteratively update. Even though a lot of our requirements and our constraints make that pretty possible, right? To consider that we are stuck with certain technologies. Our users cannot, will not accept sudden radical changes to core things and processes and interfaces that they've used. But what we need to start thinking about is moving away from these hard-worn patterns, which will not fit the user of the future, our enterprise user of the future, and also ways in which to bring these technologies and these new work-evolving concepts like AI, like changes in the working environment and actually, the home office concept, and bring that to a solution, right? So that we say, how do I represent intelligence and suggestions and recommendations in a way which users can work with, understand, and it's supporting them, rather than, hey, I'm the robot, SAP robot, and I just did all of your approvals, and then a whole bunch of emails come through saying, hey, why did you decline my vacation? We need to have representative technologies and ways in which we can help the user incorporate this new world that's already here in some ways, and do that through user experience, because that's what design is here for, right? And do this for the user for tomorrow. So how will prototyping help? Well, if we consider the world of automobiles or cars, the classic concept car, which actually I didn't know until I did a little research, was the first concept car was this thing. I'm not a brilliant car expert, as anyone who knows me will know, but I think it's a Lincoln or something. And basically this car was shown at a show in the early part of the last century, never to be produced. And that's the whole point of a concept car, that it's not there to say, this is something you'll get in 2 to 3 years' time. And that's why it's different than, say, just a beta or a prototype, or why concept cars is particularly intriguing, is to say from day one they're expected never to be shipped in that way. And that's a very important mind shift, and I go into a little bit more detail about that, especially in enterprise, because often when you come up with something very radical, as we've just been discussing, people say, yeah, but when's that going to ship? And you say, no, the whole point of a concept car is to be able to gauge reaction, is to get early validation to ideas, but also to push the boundaries. So an example with another automobile manufacturer very close to us in Germany is, for example, they made a purely glass car, right? Completely impractical in terms of, driving that down the Autobahn at the speeds German drivers do. But the idea was to say, let's look at new glass manufacturing. And they didn't just sketch it. It wasn't just a piece of paper or a beautiful 3D model. They actually adapted the way in which they produced glass to create this crazy car. And it's beautiful and it's great and they show it shows. But that then led those same engineering techniques, knowing that the glass car would never be produced, but it's at such an extreme to then being able to reduce the distances between, the metal posts that keep the solidity of the car, so that now you can minimize that, because now you have new glass techniques. You could actually have a single pane of glass for your front and back windows, but still strong enough for the car to be safe. And the concept there was to say, now you've taken parts of that concept, found the beautiful points through prototyping, through actually going through the engineering processes. I've gone from the design. I can now take that and start applying that to then today's technology, and that's why you see cars shrinking down all the metal around the driver, so that then actually you have more visibility and you don't have so many accidents. And that comes from this concept car idea, where again from day one it's framed in that way to say the expectations are, this isn't for production. We're experimenting with new ideas, techniques, concepts, and we get feedback. And we never expect, for us, for example, when we build a UX concept car, that this thing will ship, or particularly in the way it is. But on the other side, we don't say, but then it's just some flashy demo. The whole idea is it's something that can help us end to end work out, this is a design, is this something useful? And the best way that we can do that is to ask users, ask customers, ask for feedback, look at it ourselves, play with it, manipulate it. And we do that with code because we're software, right? And at the certain points in time, we listen to the customers, we listen to the right users. So for example, often I hear cases where you can go to a customer at a big event and say, how do you think VR will change your world? Now, and someone might say, look, I just want to be able to enter data quicker. That's my concern. I'm not sure about putting a headset on and, navigating the metaverse, Other users might be more into that type of topic. You need to find the right users, but also come with concepts that's more important is to understand the problems that they face. And then, as I say, pick those low-hanging fruits, conceptualize, build this into something which then can push the design system and concepts forward, but also then can be realized in a realistic way. And to do that, we need to use realistic technology that's ultimately flexible. And this evening or this afternoon for many of you, there's a talk who will be showing you with fundamentals and web components how you can produce with these very flexible assets and components and styles and assets available to you. You can build very quickly enterprise grade solutions, but also which is great for concepts, because, for example, with inclusivity again, we can already take advantage of enterprise grade accessibility concerns, which are handled in these great libraries, which means we can use them, but we can use them in very quick ways to, very flexible ways. Like we use Vue for some projects, we use React for other projects. Some of the younger types on the team are into, I think, this new stuff like Juice and Fresh and all sorts of things. In the end, what we want to do is produce a representative, flexible technology proof point, which connects also to the backends, right? And this is another thing we try and promote constantly in our prototypes, is that we also want to connect these designs downwards to real systems. Because it might be, as you'll see an example in a second, it might be great that we have We have available to us beautiful 2 retina-ready images and perfectly precise names so that they fit perfectly on the screen. But let's connect our prototypes to real data. Let's stress test them. And we can only do that if we've delivered concept cars in the right way with the right technologies, so that we can push forward our design system concepts, but also so that we can start to satisfy customer requirements. I'll skip a bit forward because I always talk too long. The way that we started to do this is really starts with design. Of course it does. Design concepts. We go to customers, we hear what the problems are. We take a big, hairy, scary problem a product has, and we say, look, let's take that and start redesigning it in radical ways, not just in one way, but in multiple ways. Let's just go wild. And we use design sprint methodologies and things like this for this. And then at the right moments, we develop the right prototypes when we're comfortable with this, and we put that in the hands of real users and say, what do you think? How do you work with that? Does that solve your problems? Does this make things easy? All the way down to a very simple concept, like I'll show in a sec, a concept of color to represent certain information. Does it work? Is it there? Then we take these concepts, we look at the validation, and then we break that down. We don't say, okay, that didn't work, goodbye. What we do is we start breaking that down and saying, you know, in this prototype and this product experience, we were comparing people. Could we generalize that into a concept of comparing objects, just generic object? It could be an engine, it could be a person, it could be a material, it could be financial data. Can we put that into some kind of pattern, which then we can apply, you know, to our design system, and then introduce these quick wins where we say, that's something we've proven in technology, we've proven that it works with the customer, and we've proven that this is something we can introduce today, right? So we're not delivering the car, we're delivering the pane of glass. And this is what we want to move towards in the way that we're delivering. And one example I wanted to show was we reimagined hiring, right? So again, any person who's been lucky enough to sort of go through processes like hiring and all the stages involved, they are necessarily complex. It's not always product fault, right? To say, why are these processes so difficult? Well, there are so many different ways hiring works, and choosing people, comparing people, waiting for responses, having comparison, and all the legal requirements around that. It's a really complex thing. So how can we look at that and make the experience easier? And very quickly, the way that we can start looking at that is, you know, our design team, and I have to give a shout out. We have beautiful product designers in the products, in our central teams, really working on this together and saying, and you can see from the Figma thing here that there's so many explorations and ideas, and we settle on a design. And one of the concepts I want to show here was we just wanted in the complete prototype to highlight this indigo color as being something representative of intelligence. So if there's a system recommendation, I've got to scroll through some slides. So if there's something recommended based on, you know, previous input or patterns or something, we highlight that using the color. And then we go ahead and prototype that. So we produce the same design. We take that using here Horizon and new experiences, and we developed this also with before the current Horizon. We're a bit freer here, but we experimented, and you know, we make these things interactive, so we can test scrolling, we can test the screen size, and more importantly, we can test actually connecting this stuff to a backend. This demo is just local, but we actually found rendering this from the backend data, we can do it quite quick, but calculating the project time length is very expensive. So actually we could say this could be progressively disclosed, while the titles would be available pretty much instantaneously. So we also learn from this, from the stress test. And I say, what if we don't have a nice picture? What if I've got 20 years of experience in the company? How long does this take? So anyway, we wanted to test, and try out these kind of concepts. And we also here have the concept of only showing the required fields. And if I want to show all the fields, I can also open that up. And also, again, this concept of, having the reason for hiring and saying it's based on predictive behaviors and things like this. So we wanted to test that. And so, yeah, we went to our user base and awesome support from the product, again, to actually run some tests and said, okay, I'll show this one, for example. What did you think about with this smart summary? Did you expect it to select things like this? And we actually had, this kind of review of what did customers see? Did they get it? Similarly, we had a very complex example with a team skill overview. And we struggled. Not everything works, right? That we had multiple iterations of how to represent a team with multiple levels of skills and have that represented in a way that, can work. And we had many iterations, but again, we went to customers and, one of our early ideas was confusing to the user, but we work out why it's confusing and we iterate on that. And as I said, then we look at these kind of ideas and patterns and say, okay, these are people with skills. What other multi-dimensional comparison patterns can we see? Let's offer that as part of our design system, or at least as our patterns and language. So if you're coming across a similar issue, here it is. And that's what we want to do with the concept cards, not produce a big bang where we say, oh, this didn't make it into the product. That was never the goal. It was to say, does this work? Does this make sense? And then also, of course, the products can look at this and say, you know what, I can do some of this already today. And, we're really grateful that the product also takes quite a lot of these ideas. And we already see in the roadmap a lot changing there. So, that's where we're going. So I probably overspoken, sorry, but I did have more time. I want to just do a call to action. If you're involved in enterprise UX, just push those boundaries of what it can do, but do it using realistic technology so that when you produce something, not only can users touch and feel it and play with it and get that next level of validation, which is essential, but also you're already on the path to production, that people can then start introducing those concepts that we're looking at today to improve those experiences for our users, which they desperately need for tomorrow.